Did any of you guys see this? So Alyssa Thomas elbowed Lexie Hull in the face. Again, she was just shooting a layup. Of all, like, I will never be one to defend Alyssa Thomas's intent, but she went for a layup and did elbow Lexie Hull in the face. There was no intent in this. She wasn't looking at Lexie Hull. She is either the, like, has the greatest body control known to man, or this was actually
17,000 people packed an arena in Phoenix, but they weren't there for the home team. They came to watch the Indiana Fever, and what they witnessed that night would become the most brutal moment of public accountability in WNBA history. A player broke an opponent's nose during a routine layup. That could have been forgotten. Accidents happen in basketball. But then she looked down at the injured player bleeding on the court and laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a genuine, prideful laugh. And in that single moment, everything changed. The crowd turned on her instantly. Even her own fans stayed silent. By the end of the game, she'd been booed for 40 straight minutes in her own building by fans who'd traveled from another state. This isn't just about one play. This is about what happens when a player's reputation finally catches up with her.
But again, like, throughout the game, you saw a thing calling freaking Lexie. She called Lexie a crybaby a bunch of times after getting her nose busted as well. That time she's pointing to the crowd. But, like, she got booed by her home fans. Like, that is bad. That is bad, getting booed by your home fans. To be fair,
the elbow itself almost doesn't matter. Watch the replay in slow motion, and you'll see what happened clearly. Alyssa Thomas went up for a layup. Her shooting motion brought her elbow up naturally as part of the shot. Lexie Hull came in late to contest, and her face ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. That part was almost certainly accidental. There's no way Thomas had the body control or the split-second awareness to intentionally target Hull's face during her shooting motion. It's the kind of play that happens dozens of times across the league every season. A defender contests late, there's incidental contact, and the game moves on. Except this time, the game didn't move on, because what happened next revealed something much darker about how Thomas views the game and how she views her opponents.
And I'm like, oh no, went to UConn, you fucking dumbasses. Olivia Nelson-Ododa got booed by UConn fans even though she went to UConn. And yeah, it's one of these things where she got booed on her home court. And
before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Lexie Hull is on the ground with a busted nose. Blood is pouring down her face. Medical staff is rushing over. The crowd is reacting in shock because they just watched an injury unfold in real time. And Alyssa Thomas, she looks over at the injured player and she starts laughing. Not a sympathetic laugh, not an apologetic laugh, a genuine, satisfied laugh, like she just pulled off something impressive. Then she does something even worse. She starts calling Hull a crybaby multiple times. Hull is still on the ground bleeding, still in pain, still dealing with the shock of a broken nose, and Thomas is pointing to the crowd like she's proud of what just happened. That's the moment the entire building turned against her. That's the moment even Mercury fans couldn't defend what they were seeing. You can argue about physical play in basketball all day long. You cannot defend celebrating an injury. That's not toughness. That's not competitiveness. That's something else entirely.
And like, that's the crazy thing, is that I wonder what the attendance for this game was. I wonder what the attendance for this game compared to their normal one was. Because I know the Fever haven't been doing good attendance-wise this year. They haven't done well at all. So there was 17,000 people at the game to watch the Fever without Caitlin Clark. And the Mercury had 9,000. Holy shit. Oh, it's the one time. It's the only time they were playing the Fever in Phoenix. Because they advertised it as, this is the one game. They advertised it as the only time you're going to get to see Caitlin Clark. I shit you not. They advertised the game as that. And they didn't even get to see her. At least they still...
Here's what makes this story almost unprecedented in professional sports. 17,000 people showed up to that game in Phoenix. The Mercury's normal home attendance hovers around 9,000. They basically doubled their typical crowd. But here's the thing that tells you everything you need to know about what happened that night. Those fans weren't there for the Mercury. They were there for the Fever. The team had marketed this game specifically as the only chance to see Caitlin Clark in Phoenix all season. They pushed ticket sales hard on that promise. It worked. Fans bought tickets. Fever supporters traveled to Arizona. People who might never visit Phoenix otherwise showed up because they wanted to see Clark play. Except Clark didn't play. She was injured, and the fans showed up anyway. 17,000 people packed that arena, knowing the main attraction wouldn't be there. That tells you something massive about what the Fever have built and what the rest of the league is dealing with.
Sophie Cunningham basically got booed for 40 minutes here. Like, Sophie pretty much got booed for the entirety of the game. From start to finish, they were booing Sophie Cunningham. And that's one of those things where I'm like, Izzy's kind of a mad one. Seeing a player getting booed the entire time. And then suddenly they dislike Alyssa Thomas. Like, even the fans that were there cheering for the Fever were booing Sophie. But they were all booing Alyssa Thomas. Like, that is one thing I would hate as a player. And I couldn't be happier that it's happening to her, by the way.
The moment Thomas broke Hull's nose and laughed, the Fever fans in that arena had exactly what they needed. They had a villain, someone to focus their energy on, someone who had just validated every negative thing they'd heard about her physical style of play. And they made sure she heard about it for the entire game. 40 minutes straight of booing. Every time she touched the ball, every time she stepped to the free throw line, every defensive possession, the crowd was relentless and unforgiving. Sophie Cunningham got booed too, but that's almost beside the point. What mattered was what happened with Thomas, because here's the brutal part for her. Even the Mercury fans in the building stayed silent. They didn't defend her. They didn't try to drown out the Fever supporters. They just accepted that she deserved it. When your own home crowd won't back you up, when the fans who are supposed to support your team decide you deserve to be destroyed, that's the moment you know you've lost something you might never get back.
I'm absolutely delighted Alyssa Thomas got booed, if I'm being real. And yeah, the Indiana Fever, when it comes down to it, are like, they are still a big team. When it comes down to it, they're still a big team in the WNBA. They are still a team that people are going to go to see. People are still going to see Caitlin Clark if she shows up once. If she shows up once a year, and you're going to go and see her. Every single time you're going to go and see her if she goes and shows up to your team once every single year. The problem is,
the elbow itself was an accident. Let's be clear about that. But accidents only stay accidents if your response is appropriate. A normal player would have checked on Hull, maybe gestured that it was unintentional, maybe shown some basic human empathy. Thomas did the opposite, and that reaction mattered so much because it wasn't happening in isolation. This is the culmination of a career built on playing right at the edge of what's legal and sometimes crossing it. Throughout the 2024 season, Thomas has developed a reputation for physical play that walks a fine line. For years, that style worked. She was respected as a tough, hard-nosed competitor. Players feared her. Opponents knew they'd have to deal with some extra physicality when they faced her. But somewhere along the way, the line shifted. What used to be seen as toughness started being seen as dirty. what used to be competitiveness started looking like bullying. And when you've built that kind of reputation, every single action gets reinterpreted through that lens. The laugh after Hull's injury isn't just poor sportsmanship in that moment, it becomes evidence of who Thomas really is as a person and a player.
But yeah, look, I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted. And chat, do you guys think that that the Alyssa Thomas getting booed is, you know, too far, or whatever the hell they would say in WNBA circles? Or do you guys think, like, obviously that this is sports, and it's what happens when you, as a local team has not managed to get enough of a fan base that you open it up and it's all away fans? Don't boo her at sports. Thank you. I'm just looking to get to see if there's still some sane people. There are still some sane people in the world. And
here's what separates a player who gets the benefit of the doubt from a player who doesn't. History, consistency, a pattern of showing respect and sportsmanship even in competitive moments. Think about someone like Breanna Stewart. She plays just as physically as Thomas. She battles in the paint. She uses her body to create space and defend. But Stewart has managed to maintain a reputation for clean, competitive basketball. She can be aggressive without being reckless. She can be tough without being dirty. That's a completely different narrative. Or A'ja Wilson, who dominates the paint without crossing lines. These players figured out how to be intense competitors while still maintaining the respect of the league. Alyssa Thomas has the talent to be in that same conversation. Her passing ability alone makes her one of the most unique forwards in the WNBA. Her basketball IQ is exceptional. She can dominate games without ever committing a questionable foul. But somewhere along the way, she decided that being feared was more important than being respected, that the physical edge was core to her identity, that intimidation mattered more than skill, and now that choice is poisoning how people view everything else she does. Even the unintentional moments get filtered through that narrative.
I just don't think in general that AT ever deserves the benefit of the doubt in any of these scenarios, and I just don't personally. I just don't want to do that ever. I'll never give AT the benefit of the doubt in any of these scenarios. The only time is that she clearly did not intentionally hit Lexie Hull. There's no not giving the benefit of the doubt. Lexie Hull came in late. And came in late as Alyssa Thomas was shooting a layup. There's no, like, Lexie fouled Alyssa Thomas. Other than that, she was probably, you know, happy.
Let's talk about what's really happening here, because this goes way beyond one player and one game. The WNBA is experiencing something unprecedented, and Alyssa Thomas's booing is just one symptom of it. The Fever came to Phoenix marketed around Caitlin Clark. The game was advertised as the only chance to see her in Arizona all season. The Mercury knew she was the draw. They sold tickets on that promise. They counted on her presence to pack the building. Then she didn't play due to injury. In most sports, that would be a complete disaster. Fans would demand refunds. The atmosphere would be deflated. The building would be half empty because people came specifically for one player. But that's not what happened. 17,000 people showed up anyway. Think about what that means. The Fever have transcended being a one-player show. Clark is still the main attraction. She's still the biggest draw in the league. But the supporting cast and the team identity have become compelling enough that fans will invest even without her. They'll travel across the country. They'll pack opposing arenas. They'll create a hostile environment for the home team just to support their roster. This creates a nightmare scenario for teams like the Mercury and the rest of the WNBA. You're competing not just for wins anymore, you're competing for the hearts and minds of fans in your own city. the Fever are turning your home games into road games, and there's not much you can do about it except hope your players don't give those fans a reason to get louder. And that's exactly what Alyssa Thomas did. She gave them the villain narrative they needed. She confirmed every negative thing they'd heard about her. She validated their anger in the most public way possible on a night when the entire spotlight was on this matchup. The Mercury marketed this game as a Caitlin Clark showcase. It turned into an Alyssa Thomas reputation destruction, and she did it to herself. The league is also dealing with a fundamental shift in how fans view player behavior. The new WNBA audience, the people who came for Clark and stayed for the team, they have different expectations than the old guard. They don't romanticize the bad boy era of physical basketball. They don't think it's cool when players celebrate hurting each other. They want competitive fire and intensity, but they also want basic human decency. When Thomas laughed at Hull's injury, she violated that unspoken contract, and the new audience made sure she knew about it. Here's the part that should keep Alyssa Thomas up at night. This isn't just about one game or one incident. This is about how you build or destroy a legacy in professional sports. Thomas is one of the most talented players in WNBA history. She's a multiple-time All-Star. She's been to the finals. She's put up incredible numbers and carried her team through difficult stretches. Her resume is legitimate. But when fans think about her career 10 years from now, what's going to be the defining narrative? Is it going to be her skill and her accomplishments? Or is it going to be moments like this, where she laughed at an opponent's injury and got booed by 17,000 people in someone else's arena? The tragedy is that she's good enough that the physical play shouldn't define her at all. She doesn't need to rely on intimidation to be effective. She could dominate games purely on skill. But the choices she's made throughout her career have created a narrative that's going to follow her no matter what she does from this point forward. That's the real cost of the moment in Phoenix. The Mercury have a bigger problem than just Alyssa Thomas's reputation. This game exposed something fundamental about how they've built their organization. 9,000 fans per game before this matchup. That's respectable, but it's not deep loyalty. It's not the kind of fan base that's going to show up and defend their players when things get controversial. It's not a passionate ride or die fan base that shows up no matter what. The Fever have built that in one season. They have fans who will travel across the country. They'll pack opposing arenas. They'll create a hostile environment for the home team. That's organizational success on a level most WNBA teams have never achieved, and it's making everyone else look bad by comparison. Think about what it means for the Mercury organization that their own building got taken over by opposing fans. That's embarrassing on multiple levels. It means your ticket prices are low enough that away fans can afford to buy in bulk. It means your marketing isn't creating strong enough local loyalty to prevent that takeover. It means you haven't given fans enough reason to care deeply about your team's outcomes. The Mercury have had successful seasons. They've won championships in their history, but they haven't built the kind of passionate, invested fan base that the Fever have created. And when you don't have that, you get nights like this one where your home arena turns into an away game. What happened in Phoenix that night tells us something much bigger about where the WNBA is right now and where it's heading. You have a league experiencing unprecedented growth driven largely by one player and the massive fan base she's brought with her. That growth is creating new dynamics that nobody quite knows how to handle yet. Suddenly, road games feel like home games for certain teams. Suddenly, players who've been getting away with physical play for years are facing real accountability from fans who won't tolerate it anymore. Suddenly, the old guard is being forced to adapt to a new reality where reputation matters more than it ever has before. Suddenly, the way you conduct yourself on the court has real consequences beyond just getting technical fouls. Alyssa Thomas getting booed in Phoenix is a symptom of all these changes happening simultaneously. The Fever fans who showed up in massive numbers represent the new WNBA audience. They're not traditional basketball fans who grew up watching the league. They're converts who came for Caitlin Clark and stayed because they believed in the team. They're passionate, they're loud, they have very clear ideas about how the game should be played and how players should conduct themselves. When they see something that violates those standards, like a player laughing at an injury, they make their feelings known. And now they have the numbers to actually impact the atmosphere in buildings across the entire league. For players like Thomas, this creates a real dilemma going forward. Do you double down on the physical, intimidating style that's worked for your entire career? Do you keep playing the way you've always played and hope the narrative eventually shifts? Or do you adapt to a league where that style is increasingly unwelcome, where fans will turn on you even in your own arena if you cross certain lines? The answer probably depends on how much you care about your legacy versus how much you care about winning in the moment. Because make no mistake, the physical play still works on the court. The Sun are still a competitive team. Thomas is still effective as a player. The Suns' physicality is part of what makes them difficult to play against. But the cost is your reputation. And once that's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. You can't undo being booed by your home crowd. You can't erase the moment you laughed at someone's injury. You can't rewrite the narrative once the fans have decided who you are. That's the real penalty Thomas is facing now. It's not about the elbow itself. It's about what comes next. And whether she has the self-awareness to understand what just happened to her reputation in that arena. Let's be very clear about something because this matters for how we understand the situation. The elbow that hit Lexie Hull's face was almost certainly accidental. That's an objective fact based on the replay. Hull contested late. Thomas was in her shooting motion. There's no realistic scenario where Thomas had the awareness and body control to intentionally target Hull's nose in that split second. If you're being fair and objective about basketball, you have to give her the benefit of the doubt on intent. The contact was incidental. It was an accident, but here's why the accident doesn't matter as much as people think. Intent only gets you so far when your character and reaction reveal who you really are as a person. If this had been a player with a clean reputation, someone known for good sportsmanship and respect, the benefit of the doubt would have been automatic across the board. Everyone would have said, that's a terrible accident. You can see how bad she feels about it. Obviously unintentional. But Thomas doesn't have that reputation to lean on. She's built a career on playing right at the edge of what's legal. So when she looks over at an injured opponent and laughs instead of showing concern, people don't see an accident. They see a pattern. They see confirmation of everything they've suspected about her priorities and her values as a competitor. Now, there's going to be people who say that booing is too harsh, that fans went too far, that this is harassment or unfair treatment of a player. Let's address that directly because it matters. Getting booed at a sporting event is not the same as having a stalker. Getting booed is not the same as someone posting your home address online. Getting booed is not the same as receiving death threats. Those are all serious issues that deserve serious responses from leagues and law enforcement. Booing is not in that category. Booing is sports. Booing is fans expressing their opinion about your behavior on the court. It's accountability. It's consequences. It's the market speaking. And Alyssa Thomas earned every single boo she received in that arena. The Fever fans didn't create the story. Thomas created the story by breaking Hull's nose and then laughing about it. They just reacted to what they saw. They made their voices heard about behavior they found unacceptable. That's not harassment. That's not crossing a line. That's how sports fans have always responded to moments they view as egregious. The WNBA can't conflate legitimate criticism with actual harassment. That's a dangerous path that protects bad behavior under the guise of defending players. Let's dig deeper into what the Fever have actually built, because this is important for understanding why the dynamic in Phoenix went the way it did. Clark is obviously the draw. She's the most popular player in the WNBA right now. Fans came to see her, but the Fever have also created something around her that's self-sustaining now. They showed up to Phoenix knowing she wouldn't play. They still packed the building. They still created energy and atmosphere. That tells you the fan base believes in the team beyond just one player. They believe in the direction. They believe in the supporting cast. They believe in the organization's vision. Compare that to most other WNBA teams where the fan base is entirely dependent on team success or individual star power. The Fever have transcended that. They've created a movement. They've built cultural capital. They've attracted a new demographic of fans who view basketball differently and expect different things from how the game is played and how players conduct themselves. That's why the booing was so universal in Phoenix. It wasn't just that fans wanted to support their team. It's that they came with values about sportsmanship and respect that Thomas violated, and they used their voice to enforce those values. The Mercury made a calculated decision to market this game around Caitlin Clark. They knew she was the draw. They knew fans would buy tickets based on the promise of seeing her. They pushed it hard. This is the only chance to see Clark in Phoenix this season. That's a direct quote from their marketing. It worked. Attendance nearly doubled. But here's the thing about betting everything on one player. You're vulnerable to injury. You're vulnerable to circumstances beyond your control. And when that bet doesn't pay off exactly as planned, you're left with a packed arena full of opposing fans. The Mercury got what they wanted in terms of attendance, but they got it in the form of a home game that felt like an away game. 17,000 people showed up, but most of them weren't rooting for the Mercury. They were rooting against them or indifferent to them. That's a hollow victory. It's ticket sales without actual fan loyalty. It's attendance numbers that look good on paper but create a terrible atmosphere for your own team. The Fever, by contrast, showed up and created a hostile environment just by being themselves. They didn't need the Mercury to market them. They marketed themselves through their passion and their numbers. Here's the thing that the WNBA needs to understand about what's happening. The league is at a crossroads. You're trying to attract new fans while maintaining your existing identity. New fans, especially younger ones who came for Caitlin Clark, have very different expectations about sportsmanship and player behavior than older generations. They don't romanticize the bad boy era of physical basketball. They didn't grow up with those narratives. They don't think it's cool when players celebrate hurting each other. They want competitive intensity, but they also want basic human decency and respect. They expect players to be fierce competitors while still treating opponents as humans worthy of respect. When Alyssa Thomas laughed at Lexie Hull's broken nose, she violated that unspoken contract with the new audience. And the new audience made sure she knew about it for 40 minutes straight. This is going to become the new standard. Players can play physical, they can battle, they can compete with everything they have, but they have to do it within the bounds of what this new audience considers acceptable, and that standard is stricter than what the old guard was used to. The WNBA can either adapt to this new reality or watch as these new fans get frustrated with players like Thomas and eventually tune out. The choice is clear. Let's come back to that specific moment because it really is the heart of everything that happened. Lexie Hull is on the court bleeding. Thomas looks down at her, and instead of any gesture of concern or apology, Thomas laughs. That single moment encapsulates everything about how Thomas views the game. It's not about competition for her. It's about dominance. It's about making a statement. It's about showing that she can do whatever she wants and face no consequences. Except she faced consequences that night. She faced them for 40 minutes straight. She faced them from her own home crowd, staying silent. She faced them from the narrative that got written about her in real time. That laugh cost her something that's much harder to recover from than a suspension or a fine. It cost her the benefit of the doubt. It cost her the ability to defend herself with it was an accident. It cost her the possibility of moving past this moment without it defining her legacy. And all of that happened in a single second of poor judgment. Think about how differently this story would have played if Thomas had handled the moment with basic professionalism. Say she breaks Hull's nose accidentally, Hull goes down, Thomas immediately stops and checks on her, maybe helps her up, maybe says something like, "I'm sorry, that was unintentional," maybe shows genuine concern for an opponent who's injured. In that scenario, the accident remains an accident. The crowd might feel bad for both players. The narrative around Thomas stays intact because her response shows her character. Instead, she laughed. That single choice transformed an accident into a character issue. That's how quickly reputation can shift in the modern sports landscape. You don't get multiple chances to show who you are. One moment, one reaction, one laugh can define everything. And for Alyssa Thomas, that's what happened in Phoenix. What happened in Phoenix raises some bigger questions about the WNBA and how it's changing. Is the league ready for this new reality where player behavior off the court matters just as much as what happens on the court? Are teams prepared for the possibility that their home arenas might get taken over by opposing fans? Are players willing to adapt their style to meet the expectations of a new audience? Are organizations going to invest in building real fan loyalty or keep betting on star power and marketing? These are the questions that should be keeping league executives up at night. Because what happened to the Mercury isn't unique, it's a preview of what's coming. The Fever have proven that you can build a fan base so passionate and so large that they'll travel across the country and pack opposing buildings. Every team in the league should be scrambling to figure out how to compete with that, and part of that competition is making sure your players don't give those fans more ammunition. Alyssa Thomas handed the Fever fans a gift by breaking Hull's nose and then laughing. She gave them the villain they needed. She validated their narrative, and in doing so, she hurt her team's chances of ever competing with the Fever in the court of public opinion. So what happens now for Alyssa Thomas? Can she recover from this? Can she rebuild her reputation? The answer is complicated. She's still a talented player. She's still valuable to the Sun. She's still capable of playing at a high level. But reputation isn't about ability, it's about perception. And right now, the perception is that she's a player who celebrates injuries and mocks injured opponents. That's a hard perception to shake. She could go out tomorrow and be the most respectful, cleanest player in the league. It would take time for the narrative to shift. It would take a sustained commitment to playing differently. It would take moments where she shows respect and sportsmanship even when nobody's watching, because that's what reputation is built on. It's not one moment, it's the accumulation of moments that define how people see you. Thomas has spent her career building a reputation for physical play and intimidation. One game where she plays clean isn't going to erase that, but a full season of clean play, of showing respect, of playing fierce without being dirty, that could start to shift how people perceive her. The question is whether she's willing to do that work. Here's something important to understand about why this moment resonates so much. Alyssa Thomas isn't alone in her physical style. The Connecticut Sun have built their identity around aggressive, boundary-pushing basketball. Sophie Cunningham got booed for 40 minutes that game too. Olivia Nelson-Ododa got booed by her own alumni fan base at a previous home game. This isn't one player, this is a team culture issue. The Sun have decided that physical, intimidating basketball is their identity. They've built their team around that style. They've recruited players who fit that mold. They've encouraged their team to play at the edge of what's legal. And for years it worked. They were respected as tough competitors, but somewhere along the way, the culture shifted. What used to be admired as toughness is now being seen as dirty. What used to be competitive fire is now being seen as bullying, and the Sun are struggling to adapt to that new reality. The organization needs to make a choice. Do they double down on the physical style and accept that they'll face this kind of backlash? Or do they evolve their team culture to meet the changing expectations of the league and its fans? Because the current path isn't sustainable. You can't build a fan base when your own fans don't want to defend your players. The timing of this moment matters too. This happens on a night when the Mercury are basically admitting they can't draw fans on their own merit. They have to market around another player just to pack their building. And then, when they do manage to pack the building with opposing fans, one of their own players creates a moment so egregious that she becomes the story. The story isn't that the Mercury competed well. The story isn't that it was a good basketball game. The story is that Alyssa Thomas broke someone's nose and laughed about it. That's what people remember. That's what defines the night in people's memories. The symbolism is brutal. The Mercury, struggling to build their own fan base, finally get a packed house, and their player turns it into a public relations disaster. It's almost like the basketball gods were punishing them for the marketing gamble. But really, it was just Alyssa Thomas being Alyssa Thomas. And that's what people will remember about this game 10 years from now. There's one more thing that needs to be said clearly. The standard for what's acceptable in the WNBA is changing. It's changing because the audience is changing. It's changing because the league is growing beyond its traditional fan base. It's changing because new fans have different expectations. And players need to understand that. The old days where you could play dirty, get away with it, and be respected for toughness are over. The old days where the league would protect players from criticism by conflating legitimate accountability with harassment are ending. This is a new era. In this era, your character matters. Your reaction to big moments matters. The way you treat opponents matters. Alyssa Thomas is experiencing this transition in real time. She played the game one way for her entire career. And now, suddenly, the rules have changed. The audience has different expectations, and she's not prepared for it. That's not entirely her fault, but she has to adapt or face continued backlash. Let's think about what this means for the WNBA's future trajectory. The league is experiencing unprecedented growth. New fans are coming in. New money is being invested. New opportunities are emerging. But with that growth comes pressure to maintain standards. The WNBA is in a position right now where it can shape the culture it wants to be. It can decide what kind of league it is. And moments like Alyssa Thomas getting booed in her home arena are going to define that culture. If the league allows players to play dirty and celebrate injuries, it sends a message. If the league holds players accountable for their behavior and their attitude, it sends a different message. The players getting booed are getting booed because fans think they're crossing a line. The league's job is to decide whether that line is real or not. And so far, the league seems to be siding with the fans. The boos weren't controversial. Most of the conversation has been, she deserved it. That tells you something about where the league's values are right now. And that's probably healthy because the WNBA is trying to attract new fans. Those new fans won't tolerate behavior that the old guard might have romanticized. One final thing to consider about this whole situation, the Mercury had a chance to be the good guys in this story. They had a chance to market themselves as the tough, competitive team in the league. They had that identity, they were playing it well, but then they made the choice to rely on marketing around Caitlin Clark instead of their own product. And then, when they finally got that big crowd, one of their players made sure the story wasn't about the Mercury at all. It was about her. It was about the moment. It was about how badly she mishandled a situation. That's the tragedy of this whole thing from the Mercury's perspective. They had momentum. They had the opportunity. They had the crowd. And it all fell apart because of how one player chose to react to an injury she caused. That's not bad luck. That's not the Fever fans being unfair. That's a player making a choice that hurt her team's brand in front of the biggest crowd they'd had all season, and her team had to live with the consequences. So here's what we're left with. Alyssa Thomas broke Lexie Hull's nose accidentally during a routine basketball play. That could have been a forgotten moment. Instead, Thomas laughed at the injured player, mocked her, and in doing so, revealed something about her priorities and her character. 17,000 people who came to support the Fever witnessed this moment. They spent the next 40 minutes expressing their displeasure. Even Mercury fans couldn't defend what happened. The arena, which should have been a home game, felt like an away game. And by the end of the night, The story wasn't about basketball competition. It was about a player who crossed a line and faced real accountability from a crowd that wouldn't accept it. That moment tells us something important about where the WNBA is headed. It tells us that the new audience has different standards. It tells us that players can't rely on old excuses or old narratives anymore. It tells us that reputation matters now more than it ever has before. And it tells us that one laugh, one moment of poor judgment can define how the world sees you going forward. For Alyssa Thomas, that's the real cost of what happened in Phoenix.